All right, this is social distillation, the submarine still of the internet, where we attempt to drop the bead and pour white lightning straight onto your brain and hopefully make some rather complex, muddy things a little clearer and purer and more understandable. Today, we're just going to kind of go a little free form. I'm going to start us off talking about some fitness things, basically some things I see at the box gym I go to that drive me crazy. And then Sam has some stuff.
Well, I think since we're going to start with the fitness stuff, then we'll go right into your questions on knee evaluations, especially in young people. And we'll kind of go through a run through of how I do my knee evaluations. Also works for low back too. And then I wanted to philosophize a little bit. I think we have to finally have the abortion talk
Okay.
at some point. And I've got a nice little analogy for CRT using a certain health condition that I have. So I think that'll make it clear how dangerously bad the philosophy is in general and why our declining mental health as a nation is escalating.
Speaking of mental health, every time you say CRT, I think of what is it, CTE, the head injury thing, the head injury condition. there's a little short circuit in my brain every time you say that. I go, what is?
Not to be confused with CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy.
Yes.
Which is actually something we kind of need to fix this, but that's part of the long-term solution. And if people want to use naughty words like programming and deprogramming your brain, that's actually how it works. So programming is the best analogous word for the whole thing. So get over it.
Yeah. If that wasn't a thing, then marketing wouldn't be a thing.
I was about to say, we're programmed every day.
That's
every second of every day.
What do you think propaganda is, and how do you think it works? And it does work. We all know that. So duh. And the flip side is true too. We try and program ourselves for positive things all the time. When it comes, I mean, we're going to talk about fitness, and what is that but programming yourself positively?
Well, and one of the themes for this whole process, especially when it comes to my side over here, is my development as a coach and that narrowing of the gap between mental health and physical health, and how closely related they are, and how closely related the solutions are. Yeah. All right, let's get on with it.
Okay, so what I wanted to start off with is last time we talked fitness, we tried to come up with some hard and fast permanent rules, because as we've said, so much of what we talk about is our general rules, and the answer we give the most to fitness questions is it depends. So we tried to come up with some hard rules for us that we follow, try and put those into into words, and then things to help others follow along. And I wanted to kind of spin off of that and come up with kind of a few general rules based off of that, that I try and follow. And this all stems from seeing annoying things in the box gym that drive me crazy. Okay, so
wait, how general do you want to go? Do you want to go as far as long-term programming, or do you want to stick with like
right now I'm talking specific exercises. Okay. So here's what triggered me. My triggers. One of our general rules that we talked about is always evaluate the risk reward. Okay. Because everything has a risk and a reward. All right. You've talked about there are fitness professionals who say, never do dips because, and there are reasons, it's not like they're just crazy people. There are legitimate concerns with the dip motion as far as shoulder health goes. However, ideally, what you would rather do is get to a point where you can do a dip properly.
Yeah. Can I make a general rule that's going to sound a little Yogi Bearish? Don't do an exercise you can't do. That's a good rule.
And we did talk about that kind of last time, about I've seen people doing Bulgarian squats, and they're just all over the place, shifting
Mhm.
all over the place. And don't do it. I try and force myself not to do RDLs if I'm not bracing on something. Otherwise, I don't do them right.
Single leg RDLs?
Yeah, single
Okay.
leg RDLs. My balance is just has just gone to crap. So that's what I try and do. Okay, but um there are certain exercises where even if done right, I would prefer not to do them at all. Okay, so
We
you
talked
brought
about
up
the
last
upright
time.
rows. Yeah.
Yeah, we talked about upright rows and
Behind the
behind the
neck.
neck pull downs. Um, uh, a good analogy of this is throwing a weighted ball. So you can find research out there, a fair bit of it, that for 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 pitchers, if you work throwing a weighted ball, it will increase your velocity. However, the trade-off to that is it also puts you at increased risk of injury because that
Mhm.
weight can pull your form off because you're not used to it. You're throwing something that's 2 or 3 times more than what you're used to, and it can throw your form off. So as a general rule, I tell younger people, just don't do it. Don't do it. The exception to that rule is unless you're being observed by someone who can go, stop that. This, you're doing this.
Well,
Okay.
there's another variable with the weighted balls that is the might even be the most important variable because most kids or most athletes are going to start off throwing the ball correctly. The
Mhm.
variable is volume. So weighted balls can be good, can be good, can be good until they're not. And when you start seeing that breakdown of technique or the underlying tissue, which you can't
Mhm.
see, and we have to go by the numbers on what is the proper amount of volume with that and what's the proper load, then if you don't have a coach that can do that, I
Yeah.
say it's complex systems like that, you got to really go hire a professional.
Right. That's one of those things that the risk just far outweighs the reward.
Mhm.
If you're not being supervised by someone who's really good at throwing mechanics that you really trust, just don't do it. It's
Yeah.
not worth it. A
And again, this is in consideration of a whole program. Like
exactly.
if I give Ben 6 weighted balls and say throw all 6 of them and then get the regular ball, that's different. That's kind of just a
Mhm.
warm up.
Yeah.
But
And so a couple of pieces of equipment that a lot of professionals have a love-hate relationship with. For example, in just about every box, well, in every box gym, you're going to have a leg extension machine, and a lot of them have back extension, lumbar extension machines. And I would put those in the category of the risk far outweighs the reward unless you're being in a supervised position.
which sucks because I'm going to speak just the leg extension for now because it's actually one of the machines I wish I had. I just don't have space for. I've only
Mhm.
got 600 square feet here, and we use some floor space for some exercises. So it's actually one I wish I had because there's a lot of utility for it, especially in the bodybuilding type arena or even in the
Mhm.
rehab arena where someone can't put a bar on their back and do the proper load, or even with the baseball players, you want to take pressure off their shoulder for a while in the off season, putting a bar on their back. I do have a safety squat bar, but even still, a leg press might even be better. The problem is it's so easy to use properly, but nobody does it. The key is if you're going down so far, range of motion, that your butt comes off the seat and your low back flexes, which means it rounds, then you've gone too far. And if people follow that general rule, you take away 90% of the problems with the leg press.
Right. Leg press, but I said leg extension, which
Oh,
you're going back and forth between the two.
okay. Well, so that's the rule on leg press. Onto yeah, okay, leg extensions.
That
The best
that's a
use
good
for
one
that
too.
is to deadlift it and throw it in a pond. But the leg extension is what we call an open chain exercise, which means the load is not connected to the floor. Like a push-up would be closed chain because my hands and the force production is going into a stable surface. Whereas in a leg extension, it's going into a free extended. So the firing order of your muscles is different. So that's there. Plus there's instability in the joint. That's the fulcrum, which would be your knee joint, which is why it's called a knee extension. But so because of that change, there's a lot of movement inside the knee, and that kneecap also compresses into the knee. And if you have any imbalance, it's going to compress in and to the side, which is usually lateral in most people whose general experience exercising is going for a jog. So that constant, it's one of those exercises, just like we talked about with the upright row, that you're not going to know it's bad till it's bad, but you've been working on it for years.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of those things that you're probably going to do it wrong. And the more you do it wrong, the more that builds up, and you're putting yourself at risk of a repetitive use injury.
Yeah. And there's no instant feedback in it if you're doing it wrong. So you won't feel that slight shift in your knee unless you just got really unstable knees.
Yeah. And you're, maybe pushing way more load than you should on that thing.
But again, risk reward. If I'm a competitive bodybuilder, there are very few methods for really crushing those quads to get the result I want that are going to have the same result.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why in bodybuilding magazines, or if you've ever seen, old clips of Arnold, you see him on that leg extension, pushing out a lot of weight and then squeezing it and holding it and coming back. It's also why you see it in a lot of physical therapists' offices. So if you've ever had work done on your knees, part of your therapy was probably, some kind of leg press and leg extension machine, but you had a physical therapist standing over your shoulder looking down at it.
And mitigating load, and probably even putting their hands on the joint to feel what's going on in there.
Yep. To feel what's going on, to help stabilize and all that.
And then again, we're talking about the goal. The goal at that point is to build up the tissue around that knee joint.
Yeah.
In somebody who's probably not in a situation where they can handle their body weight on it.
Right.
And that's a useful tool in that situation. But if you're loading up, 150 pounds on a leg press, and leaning back into it, trying to swing your leg up, there's a lot going on in your knee.
And I see a lot of that. So that's one of those that I say, look, just unless you're in a therapeutic situation, just stay off of it, because for the fitness goals that most people have, you're going to be better off doing some sort of single leg squat movement, some sort of, some sort of lunge or lunge variation,
or
so
just
long
a
as you can
closed,
do it well.
or just a closed chain version. Like I like the sissy squat. So I don't know if your gym has one of those setups where you could put your feet in the bottom. Like, okay, so these are my feet. This is the front. There's going to be something to put your feet in, and then there's going to be something behind your knee, and you can kind of lean back as you go.
You can do it free. You'll see a lot of bodybuilders doing it freestanding, just putting something under their heels and then leaning back with dumbbells. That can be a little bit dangerous because it's hard to, you don't have the stability that you would.
Well, again, it's one of those that's great till it's not.
Exactly. But and you have the added benefits of the lunges and the lunge variations, that you're getting additional muscle recruitment and you're working balance. So you're getting a little more work. Again, the leg extension is there machines are there to help you do work. That's what a machine is, general definition, any machine. So keep in mind that exercise machines came from the therapeutic setting. They were originally, the first ones were invented by some dude whose name I forget, who was trying to create ways for people to exercise who couldn't do normal exercise for whatever reason, whether it's because they were incredibly out of shape, or in this case, because of, injury or surgery or what have you. So they needed assistance in the same way that if you're old and decrepit, you need a walker, you need assistance walking. So that's a good one.
Here's a good substitute if you've got knee problems right here.
Yeah. This is called the terminal knee extension.
TKEs, terminal knee extension, or as one of my young athletes just used to call it, the knee exercise.
That's a good one. So all you're doing here is you're putting a band behind your knee, and while the knee is relaxed there, you've got a little bit of tension, and all you're doing is flexing your quad to lock that knee. And then I like to hold it for like 1 to 3 seconds.
Yeah, or do a
Really
slow
make that work.
return.
Yeah.
But the only way that you really go wrong on this one is you start rocking your body back and forth to try
Yeah.
to move that band. If you keep your body position, except for that knee, relatively still, you'll feel the burn real quick. And not only will you feel the burn, but you'll feel a lot in what the vastus medialis, which is the most inside of your quad muscles, which is something most people are deficient in. Again, if you're just a lace them up runner. So this is a really good one for shoring up your knees for a lot of running or even walking or doing a lot of stairs. But also it's just a very safe way to work that quad muscle and the structure around the knee.
And so that's a good example of what I was leading to with just machines in general is before you get on a machine, think, do I need it? Do I need the assistance? Either because so one of the reasons you use a machine is because you need the assistance. You cannot do you cannot work that muscle or muscle group without the added stability of the machine. The other reason you would use one is for volume. If you're doing a ludicrous amount of volume, then you need that additional muscle recruitment in a way that that changes the angle of approach or takes other muscles away because you're loading up on volume on them on the other day. So if you're a serious bodybuilder, then you would hit the machines to add that additional volume.
Well, I would say if you have some sort of stability issue too, because if you have trouble maintaining posture when, say, you're pressing overhead, that little overhead press machine is a good option for you, because you can sit in that chair and it only goes through a certain range of motion and you can do that relatively safely. Same with the little hammer strength presses and everything.
That would be need is okay. I need this because I have a gimpy neck, which affects my shoulders and my shoulder movement. So a lot of time I try and do overhead presses, freestanding, or sitting dumbbell or barbell overhead presses to work my shoulders. Sometimes I can't. And so I hit that overhead press machine. But a couple, the way you evaluate that is, am I unable to do this movement properly without the machine? If I use the machine, will I be doing the movement properly? Okay, and this is what brings me to what specifically triggered my insanity at the gym the other day is two things. If you sit down at a leg press machine and you go through, you use the machine to assist your stability and go through a squat movement without, compromising your posture or anything like that. The things you mentioned when you went off on your leg press tangent. Good, great. Why in the world would you turn yourself sideways and put your leg up like this and press? Why? Why are you doing this? Now, I know why you're doing it because you saw it on Instagram somewhere. And, if we were to attach sensors to your leg, we would probably find that, yes, as opposed to a standard leg press, you are getting increased recruitment of those lateral muscles that women who want to build up their glutes, this is one of the things they do. And it drives me crazy because, all right, fine. Let's say you're getting additional recruitment. So you're getting more work in those lateral muscles. What are you sacrificing?
Well, here's the thing is, what's your goal? And if their goal is aesthetics, then they can pound the heck out of that without any real core loading. And if their goal is to have a waist this big and hips this big, well, there you go. That they're accomplishing that goal. Because if they load their core to do, say, lateral squats or any of the other single leg versions like we talked about, then they're going to get some hypertrophy of those abdominal, oblique, and lower back muscles, which is going to compromise that 20-inch waist that they want. So it's for health reasons, it's not the best option. But again, for those aesthetic, the cosmetic reasons, then you can see that a little bit. And if their job's looking pretty on Instagram, there you go.
Right. And again, we kind of hit on this when we were talking about how do you find a trainer? What do you consider an expert? Is look why they're telling you what they're telling you. If you're getting your workout advice from some Instagram butt model, that's literally her job. That's literally her livelihood. What she's doing in her workouts are specifically designed to get clicks and likes. Is that what you really want? Is that what you really need for yourself?
Well, let me put on my trainer shoes and justify that work, while still maintaining the health benefits. I've already done our regular squat variation for the day. I've already done some closed chain out in the middle of the floor, lunge variations and lateral work. But I know this athlete, which all my clients are athletes, even my fitness clients, I know this person can handle more leg work at the end of the day, but her core is going to be toast. Okay, let's finish her off on that leg press machine, because we can accomplish more that day without hurting her back or exacerbating anything else. But yet she's still got her core loaded exercises for the day. We're just doing a little extra because her legs can handle a little more.
Yeah. Well, and this is again where the biases of the person you're getting information from come into play. I got into this because of my wrecked back. So I'm always going to be biased towards spinal posture. Okay. So when I see things that are screwing up your spine, that's going to drive me crazy. And if I'm training you, or even if I just give you if you just want advice, I'm going to advise you posture. Your bias is, and that's not a bad word. We've kind of gotten to the point where bias is a bad word. It's not a bad word, okay, necessarily. It's how you use it, okay. So your bias is towards, I would say, athleticism and maximum results, and you're confident in your abilities because you've been doing this long enough, and at a high enough level. You're confident in your abilities to manage the risk reward and keep that balance. Okay. And so I would say to anyone out there, if you're working by yourself in a box gym, that's not you. Okay. If you've got a trainer that you trust as an expert and they're going to put you through these things and you feel okay, then yeah, you can ignore some of these general rules because this person knows how to work the exceptions. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm trying to pinpoint my bias, because my bias is that I will always put the health of my client before their bias. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Whether it's I'll account for them and I will try to get them to their goals to the best of my ability, but not sacrifice their health in the process. Which is why I don't train competitive bodybuilders or fitness stage athletes, because at some point in that competitive process, and it is all about the gym and diet. So unlike this, we have to separate them from my performance athletes, like pitchers and basketball players and stuff. So the whole process of bodybuilding and fitness competition is gym and diet. And at some point, both of those are compromised for excessively lean and excessively massive.
Mhm.
And those are, at some point, it becomes not healthy and you can't help it because of the sport. And that's when I bow out. So I can't do that. That's my bias. So the health of my client is always first. So if they come in and say, I want to lose 50 pounds and they've barely got 50 pounds to lose, I try to push them to be more healthy in the process. Well, if they come in and say, I want to pick up 800 pounds, but yet they're about 150 pounds overweight, well, that 50-pound weight loss probably should be the first goal, because they're going to do everything better after that point. And so when I get my athletes in, the number one job of a strength coach is to make sure they're never hurt in the weight room. The number two job of the strength coach is to make sure they're hurt less on the field. And the number three is performance. And I go in that order, and most coaches flip it. And so they'll get better initial results, but then their athletes break down. JJ Watt for the Houston Texans is a great example of this. Yeah, bro, you can jump on a fridge, but can you stay on the field?
Mhm.
So that's my bias. It's always health first. And what I found with my athletes, especially the youth athletes, and this was where I kind of broke through the mold and got my reputation, was when I did that, they automatically played better. Now with the higher level athletes that come to you later, they've already been through a lot of the process, and sometimes it's fixing them. It makes them better, but it's a different story. But with those youth athletes, especially the ones that play year-round ball, I play off season for them. I am their not playing ball, and everybody goes, "Oh, I want baseball specific programming," and I'm like, "Well, yeah, sure. I'm going to just make them a better human being physically."
Yeah.
And that's what the approach I took, and that's why my injury rate is almost non-existent.
Right. And when we were growing up, this year-round sport thing was very rare.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's the worst thing for youth sports. It's the number one cause of injury.
Yeah.
Anecdotally,
I don't recall any non-impact injuries. Right. So obviously, if you have a collision at home plate, or somebody goes
spikes
full
you on your head
speed
in
into
wrestling,
or goes full speed into your knee while you're playing football, obviously there's going to be an injury there. But we're seeing Tommy John surgeries now in teenagers, and that's ridiculous.
I've done a lot of post rehab on it, and it is ridiculous, because otherwise healthy athlete, and they're blowing out the inside of their arm at 16 years old. This should not happen.
And there's reason, we can say there's research to suggest, and we feel confident, but I don't know that anyone's done any research to show definitively that cross sport athletes are overall healthier and thus less susceptible to injury.
The evidence is strong there. And this is a hard thing to do, because you really can't do a whole lot of randomized controlled trials. You can do retrospective cohorts, and you can do cohorts where you follow them along, and that's been done. And realistically, there's a lot of colleges based on the data there that will specifically recruit. Vanderbilt's one of them, specifically recruit multi-sport athletes because they're healthier.
And that's what you're trying to compensate for with your athletes that are so sports specific. And just anecdotally, how many times, especially if you're watching baseball, and then do you hear that, this guy was also a star high school quarterback or basketball player or whatever?
Well, there's two parts to that, and nobody wants to hear one of them. One part is multi-sport athletes are healthier, and realistically, here's one of the reasons to be just a healthier athlete is when you get injured, how much time do you have to take off? That is time performing, that is time practicing, that is time training. And so at the end of the day, the kid that stays healthier over the course of time is going to have more practice, play, and training time. So that's number one. The second part is, this is the one nobody wants to hear, because we live in a society where we tell kids you can be anything.
No, you can't.
A great athlete tends to be just a great athlete. One of the highest level pitchers I ever trained, he was also a junior Olympic swimmer before he didn't
Yeah.
start pitching till his freshman year of high school. And he went out there and just started blowing people away the first year he pitched. So a great athlete's a great athlete.
Yeah.
Jackie Robinson always claimed baseball was my fifth best sport.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, not wrong if you look at his biography and see what he did in football and track and field.
Jim Thorpe, remember him?
Yeah. Yeah. Here's another one, a ridiculous all-around athlete. So there is definitely a genetic component, but if you're trying to beat genetics, which is one of the reasons I love, and my dad especially, I'll talk about this, why he loves baseball, is because it is one of the few sports where if you're dedicated enough that you have at least have a chance of beating genetics.
Mm-hmm.
Say in football, it's really hard to beat genetics, right?
Part of that is, this is another reason I hate youth sports, is being put in a box.
Mm-hmm.
I hate when I get the little chubby kid and they're like, yeah, he's an offensive tackle and he's 10,
right,
10, 11 years old. He's an offensive tackle. He's going to be the next big thing. And I'm looking at dad who's 5'9" and mom who's, 5'3". And I'm just like, you do know he's not going to be 6'4", 320 pounds, right?
Right.
I know he's got a little weight on him, but let's start doing some movement work, because maybe one day he could be a cornerback. If we get his speed up. So a lot of that is early on selection. I hate when these kids are thrown into a box because of the way they look when they're 10, 11, 12 years old.
Right.
Early specialization in pitching, but just because they want to be a pitcher, but it's like, he's going to be built like Altuve. Maybe he should be in the, playing that position. Let's get him in some hitting lessons.
Yeah.
So genetics plays a part, and you can overcome it in most sports. I mean, Spud Webb was what, 5'4"?
Yeah.
And he won a dunk contest, in the NBA. So you can overcome it in more sport, but you have to be open to adapting to how your body grows and how your genetics play out. There is some muscle fiber issues that we have to talk about. Like Usain Bolt is probably a higher degree of type 2A fibers than almost the rest of the world.
Yeah.
And that's why he runs 9 seconds for 100 meters, but can't breathe for 20 minutes after.
And that's, yeah. When you hear the term genetic freak, that's what it means.
Mm-hmm.
And
you're not, LeBron James talks about hard work, but he would have played at least at the college level with just playing pickup basketball all his life. So
yeah.
There is a genetic component, but at the same time, hard work can overcome those things. You just got to find where you should put it. Sometimes I'll get a small athlete that's just hell bent on one sport, and I'm just like, have you tried weight class sports? Because you can be small and succeed.
Yeah. Well, we've gone off on a tangent that I didn't intend. So let me quickly bring up, because we do talk about, I know I bring up the Instagram butt models a lot because they drive me crazy, but we're not just picking on ladies here, because the dumb bros do dumb things all the time too. And so this was the second thing I saw the other day that drove me a little bit crazy about form, is being on a pec deck, the upright
Pec
chest.
deck is this one.
Let's fly. I
Well,
thought pec deck was here, the press, the seated chest press.
the pec deck machine is the fly machine.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've heard pec deck referred to as the upright chest press machine.
I haven't been in a big gym forever. Maybe they've changed the terminology on it, but the pec deck machine was this one, which actually does have its problems as well.
Yes.
As far as overuse injuries, because your bicep tendon tends to pop out of its groove there in that position. And if you are prone to that problem, it will keep popping out of its groove until it frays like a rope and pops more than out of its groove.
And then your bicep looks funny.
Yeah. But
anyway,
usually you'll get a nice little bicep tendonitis before that, which stops you before you pop the bicep.
So this is another one of those risk reward things in general, because especially when you watch people doing it, because of the way that it's a machine. So it locks you into a certain position and range of motion,
Which is good if you
because,
have a severe stability issue.
which is good if you have a severe stability issue. It's bad if you're not being very conscious of what that positioning is doing to you. And I see a lot of people who don't adjust it properly. And so their shoulders are going into some sort of internal or external rotation while they're doing it. So if you take yourself and then rotate yourself 90 degrees and think about what you would be doing in a regular bench press, at least properly done, then that motion is keeping the shoulder joint kind of locked in position. It's not rolling. That ball is not rolling in the socket while you're moving, which is bad. It's one of the reasons I don't like upright rows, is because it's rolling the ball in the socket while it's under a load. So in general, I'm not a fan of the upright chest press machine, whatever you want to call it. But what you see a lot of bros doing these days is turning themselves sideways and doing this.
I'm having trouble picturing this because I can picture the machine you're talking about, but I can't figure out how you're turning sideways.
So normal here, imagine the handles behind me, weight behind me, and this is the normal movement of the machine. Okay. So now what I'm doing is I'm turning 90 degrees on the seat, grabbing the bar and doing this.
Oh, okay. I can picture it now. Okay.
Does picturing it hurt your head?
Well, I mean, it's not doing a whole hell of a lot for your chest.
I don't know where this comes from, because when I ranted about the Instagram butt model sideways leg press, I'll admit that I can envision how that actually would increase muscle recruitment. I just don't like it because of the way you're contorting your spine. I don't know where this comes from, because you can't. Okay, so I like biomechanics because it's physics. Okay. Work has a time function in it. So time under tension is the term you hear a lot in meathead circles, right? Because the longer
work
that
is force time distance.
Yeah, it's time distance. So the longer that muscle is under tension, the more work it's doing. This is such a small motion. What do you think you're doing? The only thing I can think is that it feels like you're getting a big pump because of the way that pec muscle.
This might be analogous to the craze with doing sumo squats and deads with the female athletes, because the external rotators of the hip in a sumo are shortened, and they're held in this position for a long time. So you feel it more. You feel it there a lot more, but it's actually doing less work. So they think, oh, I'm working my butt more in the sumo position than in a conventional deadlift position, which actually it's the opposite. They're working it less, but because it's in that contracted position, it feels like they're doing more, when actually it's recruiting more the groin, the quad to assist the glutes versus a conventional, which is more glutes, hamstrings. So that you might be right with feeling it more because it's in that constantly contracted position without going through a range of motion. I'm trying to think. I mean, the pec would still be the prime mover, but yeah, it's already starting in a contracted position.
That's why you're feeling
you might get a lot of anterior delt recruitment.
See, my problem with it from my bias is that when I see someone in that position, what I see is that their shoulder is not moving properly, what would be a proper movement in either a press or a fly. So I worry about the strain that's putting into the shoulder joint, especially those anterior ligaments, like that biceps tendon there. The other thing I see is now you've taken away the benefit of the machine, which is stability. And so your neck is not supported. And so when I see people doing that, they're getting a lot of flex in their levator scap. Okay. And if you've got, because of the way, not so much from the movement, but because of the way they're sitting and having to stabilize, I'm seeing a lot of neck movement and flexing in the muscles around the neck. And if you're like most of us, you spend most of your time here, which means your shoulders are probably rounded at least slightly forward, if not a lot forward from what I see from people, right? So you add that rounded shoulder to now putting extra work through here, through the front of the neck, the front of the shoulder. You're just making that worse.
Well, and it's really problematic, especially that line you just drew there. Now we're speculating here on this because I'll have to do more research. But if we are activating that for those not familiar with the muscles of the neck, you got your SCM, which runs from your jaw down to your clavicle, which is a very strong structure. Clavicle is, as small as it is an incredibly strong structure. That's why your pec attaches to it here. And then the strongest muscles in your neck attached to it from the top. Underneath that is your scalenes. And those run from the base of your neck, partially your spine, partially back of your jaw, down to the first rib. The first rib is not made to be pulled up on. Ribs are made to challenge that compression from the sides and the front. So they're not made to be pulled up on. And we see this in baseball athletes all the time. If you've ever heard of thoracic outlet syndrome, we did a lot of good with the rotator cuff work, but if you don't watch your athlete and they start doing this, then they're activating all of that structure underneath connected to the top rib. And over time, that top rib elevates. And that top rib elevating, well, you've got a bunch of blood vessels and nerves that run over the top of that, and you've got structures on the top pushing down, like your clavicle, pushing down. So there's only so much space in there. So those nerves and arteries get compressed, and all of a sudden you can't feel your first two fingers, or you have pain in your arm going down, or just no strength. And what they have to do with that surgery is move that top rib back down and secure it back where it was. So I also see a lot of this in hairdressers because they spend all day in this position. So it's one of the first things I do when I get someone with that kind of job as well. But I don't know if we're gonna have to do more research on this. We're gonna have to do a follow-up on this one.
Yeah,
because I can't see. I can't see the benefit, and we can speculate on a lot of downsides to it.
Yeah. Think about this is one of the first things you taught me, is that learn anatomy, because if you know not just what the muscles are, but know where they connect and know how the fibers run. Okay, because that's how that muscle is going to do work.
Yeah, my first thought on how this is going to be beneficial is some sort of interplay on, I'm trying to target certain parts of my pec, the clavicular fibers or the sternal fibers. The clavicular fibers, see, they're at full contraction right now, and I haven't even extended my arm. But the sternal fibers are doing the work to extend the arm.
Maybe someone thinks they're going to get increased work on the upper pecs if they do this,
or even fill in if they've got a gap in the chest. Maybe fill that in, which I would just use dips, but that's just me. Yeah. I'm speculating on the benefits of this, and it just, like you said, someone did something ridiculous. Maybe it feels good, and they said, "Oh, we're gonna," and now they're popular. Doesn't mean it's wrong. We could be wrong. But we're gonna have to think about this one and follow up.
Yeah. Just looking at it though, and with any exercise, just do a quick search, just do a quick image search on the muscle group and look at the muscle fibers and the way they run, and think, am I moving this muscle group that I'm trying to work in the way it's supposed to move? Because if you're not, then you're probably wrong, or at least not optimal, right? So if one of the big constraints and one of the reasons people use trainers is time. Okay, I need to get in and get out quick because I've only got so much time in the day.
Giggity.
So you want to work optimally. So is it optimal to sit here and do silly chest things when you could do more work quicker by doing the basic things that stretch those pec fibers the way they run, that stretch and then contract in the way they run? And if you just think about uh, your body's natural posture and its natural movement patterns, that will keep you from doing a lot of the silly things that people do that hurt themselves in the gym. The other thing that will keep you from doing it is stop doing if it hurts. So one of the reasons I brought up the back extension is I've seen like a half dozen people just in the last week or two doing. Okay, so for anyone who doesn't know what I'm talking about, the back extension machine, it locks you in like this, and it's got a bar right here and a weight stack, and then you push back against it, so it's flexing your back and it's making you work those muscles in the back. It's one of those things that I advise people stay off of it unless you're in a therapeutic situation, because it's not worth the risk. But what I don't understand, if somebody, asks for a professional opinion, that's what I'll tell them. But what I don't understand is the people who don't need to ask, because as soon as they get done, they go, and they start rubbing their low back. Why are you doing it? If it hurts, stop.
Yeah. Where do I go with this one? Because part of my philosophy on health is making your back indestructible. Mm-hmm. And you have to skirt that line of the proper amount of work to do that. Because if you don't work it, you're just going to make it weak. And if you overwork,
what was your new saying? Appropriately uncomfortable?
Appropriately really difficult.
Appropriately really difficult.
Another one I like is lasting positive change. Are we creating lasting positive change? But realistically, when we talk about volume, it's not how much work can you do, it's how much work can you recover from. And so that's where there's a lot of interplay, especially even when I'm working with a client as a professional, we have to communicate a lot. I can't work with a client that won't talk to me or that just wants to go. So if you're not talking to me and you're not being honest with me, you're not going to get the results you want. So not only are we testing how much you can do that day, but then the next time you come in, it's like, how have you recovered from this? How was your day after that? Did you have to take the rest of the day off physically because of what we did? If I crush your leg so bad that you just resist walking upstairs the rest of the day, did we have a lasting positive effect?
Right. And especially if you're still, sore or even in pain, especially like 2 days later. All right. You're working out you see me every other day. We did an intense leg work on Monday. You come in on Wednesday and you're hobbling around. Okay, that's not good. We need to address that.
Yeah, it's how much can you recover from? But specifically with the back extension machine, again, it can be a great exercise. Back extensions are great exercises. You get back extensions every time you do your deadlifts and your RDLs and anything.
It's a supported good morning. I like the good morning, but it's a dangerous movement because of what you're doing to yourself.
Oh, I use good mornings all the time.
Yeah.
But again, mitigating load and making sure they can, and this is, again, the luxury of my clients is they have me right there. And the prerequisites for a back extension or any of those other variations we talked about is, can you hinge at the hip? Can you hinge at the hip? Because the back should be stabilizing as you're moving the weight, not the actual back doing the movement. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So the back is a support structure, always and ever. The hips do the work. Okay. Because the back will break down before the hips, no matter what. Here's a good test. Lay on your stomach, just as flat as you can be, and lift your leg. Keep it straight. If you cannot keep your leg straight when you lift it off the ground, do not do a back extension. because your hamstring took over. And when the hamstrings take over, the low back and the hamstrings do the movement. If you can lift the leg while keeping the leg perfectly straight, your glutes are doing the work. So those are two prerequisites. You can hinge at the hip without bending, without hunching the back, and you can lift the leg without bending the knee. If you can do those two things, then just start slow and you can do the movement. We're fine.
As a general rule, as one of these general rules, and one of the things that makes me cautious about machines is I don't like movements that do not start and end with yourself in proper neutral posture, right? So the difference between a good morning and the back extension machine, the reason I'm very leery of the machine is because you start in a compromised position. You start kind of with your back folded forward, and because it kind of encourages you to put yourself in hyperextension if you're not careful. So if you're doing any kind of squat or deadlift movement, I want you to start standing up straight, not with your back arch. Don't think shoulders back, think shoulders neutral, not with your hips poking forward, your hips neutral. And I want you to go down and I want you to return to that neutral posture. If you're not starting and ending in neutral posture, you need to seriously think, where are the dangers in this movement and what's the risk reward? So should I do it or not?
Yeah, this is getting really complicated here because at some point of the day we got to say just move. And yeah, that's a good rule if you can maintain neutral, but I don't think people understand that. And this gets to the philosophical bit with the with public health is we've so lost touch with reality that we don't even know what feels right anymore.
That's a good point.
So we sit all day. We're in a car all day. We're at a computer all day. And then when we get home, we watch Netflix all night. So just the fact that being in what you said, a neutral position, which is just a good posture position. So I'm gonna change the wording there. Being in good posture feels wrong.
Yes.
Or feels like hard work is part of the problem. So someone who's trying to do what you said there might feel wrong.
Yeah, I know, because I do it to myself all the time. It's one of the reasons I work out at a box gym sometimes, and it's why one of the things on the top of my list for adding to my home gym here is a mirror, because I know from my own health conditions that I do not have good posture, and I especially my shoulders, putting them in neutral position often feels like I'm pushing them back.
I had a PT help me with this at one point because I was having shoulder issues. And little background on the shoulder issues. Some of it is structural because I've had, when I was 4 months old, had a surgery where they basically opened all the ribs on this side, did some work on my heart, and then put me back together like Frankenstein. So it doesn't move like the regular thoracic rib cage should move. The other part was a very large person slammed me on my side when I was 10 years old, and this whole shoulder was basically destroyed. And being a young, poor kid, we didn't go get it scoped or have surgery. So it's just, it locks right here. No matter what I do, I can force it. But you see how I elevated, like I was talking about, to force it into that position. So I have a fused AC joint, probably some labral damage, and who knows what else in there. So those two things create a just kind of a storm for shoulder pain. But I had we were connected to a physical therapy unit when I was working for the athletic performance gym, and one of the ladies there said, "Hey, here's the best thing you can do. You drive 30 minutes here, right?" I was like, "Yeah." She said, 10 times in your drive every day. Grab the wheel, pull into posture, count to 10. Relax for a little bit, grab the wheel, pull into posture, count to 10. You know what? That fixed everything. It was the best advice I've ever gotten for
Mhm.
my shoulders. And it was because you're in a bad posture situation like we're in right now, sitting at a computer, reaching for the mouse. Just pull back, hold 2, 3, 10 seconds, and then relax and then go back to your normal posture.
I try and remember to do that when I'm on long drives because of my neck. Sitting up with my arms extended like this, it just wrecks me. And I'm usually, if I go on a drive that's any longer than 3 hours,
Mhm.
I'm usually a mess the whole next day. But if I can try and remember to do some isometric things, and now this leads neatly into, we said we were going to talk about some knee stuff because I've got a potential client I'm evaluating tonight whose primary concern was knees, started recently having knee pain. And one of my other general rules is that unless there was an impact, the point of pain probably isn't the root cause of the pain. So most of the time, in my experience and in my reading, if you have pain somewhere along your arm, it's probably coming from your scap, because the scapula is what drives that arm movement. So if it gets out of whack, then it's going to cause some sort of compensation and things are going to move improperly down the line. Same thing with the leg. If you have ankle or knee pain, it's probably in your hip unless there was an impact.
If there was a little hiccup there, we took a bathroom break and I took the opportunity to get a whiteboard for this one because we got a little joint anatomy 101 with this specific topic. Okay,
Yeah.
so continue on.
So just again, speaking generally, this is why back pain really sucks. Chronic back pain really sucks because your back is your core. It connects to your limbs. So when you're in chronic back pain, you just generally feel crappy all the time and you don't move properly. As an example of what I was saying about the point of the pain not being the root cause of the pain, shin splints. So anyone who's done a lot of running and has gotten shin splints, it is, I was going to say certain, but I better hedge myself in case you can think of an exception. It is almost certain that the cause of your shin splints is somewhere in your hip because it has to do with your gait. Usually a shin splint is caused because your feet should move out from your hips, neutrally. If you're standing with your legs in a straight line from hip to ankle, and your feet should move out like that. If your feet fall in a line while you're running, that's not good, and that's making the angles of the stress really funky, and that's usually where your shin splints are coming from. So, my shin hurts. You're going to think there's something in here that's the problem. No, it's back up the chain. And because your hips are out of whack or you've got an imbalance in your muscle strength, it's causing that movement pattern to not execute properly. And so going back to the leg extension, one of the dangers of the leg extension and the reason we're leery of it is because the knee is structured so that it carries a load vertically. That's how you can squat 800 pounds. All right. Because everything is designed to move like this. Okay. On a leg extension, the force is going this way against the knee, perpendicular to the knee. That's not really how it's structured to move a load. Okay.
Uh, sort of ish,
Sort of.
not. Because when you're doing a squat, the action at the knee is extending the knee. And it is because the foot is planted into the ground, it is
Yep.
pushing it this direction. So you are getting that load that way. It's just it's because that point on the shin is not connected to a solid surface like the ground that changes everything.
Yeah, but I think the force vector matters.
Well, the force vector is relatively the same. It's the placement and the stability. Because again, that knee extension is pushing the ground forward. But your foot is on the ground and locked into the ground, so it doesn't move forward, so your leg goes instead. Now the force curve is different. The force curve is different. So where the greatest tension is different.
Well, I mean, the application of the force is perpendicular to the knee. On the squat, the application of the force
But
is parallel.
with the action of the knee though. So each joint has its own action. So the knee is pushing the foot forward. If the foot was on a slick surface and you tried to do that, you would go.
Yes, because that's why the term is the same no matter which exercise you're doing. It's leg extension.
It's still knee extension.
Yeah,
yes.
it's still a knee extension.
That closed change changes everything because your body develops a cam all the way down, which stabilizes the joints when it feels that solid ground. Whereas when it doesn't, it just pushes it forward, which the whole tibia goes whoosh, and we got what you call shear force, where it shifts the bone forward, and that changes everything. But the joint by joint approach to injury prevention. So the shin splints is not a good example because shin splints is a general term. Shin splints has a lot of causes. It could be micro fractures in the bone from running on concrete. It could be sore tibialis anterior, which is
every time I've done any reading on the term, it's been talking about damage and or inflammation to the tibialis, which for anyone who doesn't know is a little muscle that runs down your shin.
Mm-hmm. So there's that. It could also be the tibialis posterior and the perineals that run behind the shin. They could be inflamed depending on the action. Could be the bone itself has microfractures in it. Could be just fluid retention, what we call compartmentalization behind the tibia. So there's lots of causes to shin splints. But the joint by joint approach, we got our little man or woman, hairless woman, if it's Sinead O'Connor. You got everything's reversed in Zoom. I'm not used to doing this on the camera, but mobile, stable, mobile, stable, mobile. That's the upper spine. So I separated the spine into two things. So you got the lumbar spine should be stable. The thoracic spine should be mobile. The scapula should be stable. Even though we talk about movement, it should be stable movement. Shoulder, ball and socket joint should be mobile. Elbow stable. And we forgot to put the wrist in there, should be mobile. So it's an alternating mobile, stable, mobile, stable, mobile, stable all along the line. And so when you see an injury, say in the knee, that's a chronic injury. Not some, again, like you said, not someone colliding into your knee, or something like that. A chronic injury in the knee. It's usually a result of lack of mobility in the ankle or the hip. So this should be a stable joint. The knee should only do that. It should only hinge. Whereas the hip I couldn't even have gotten my knee up to that position if I didn't have a mobile hip. So, or the ankle, if the ankle's locked, and you see this in athletes when they tape their ankles a lot, is you see the movement compensated further up the thing where the knee is grinding and shifting because the ankle's locked in place because of either a stability issue or not a stability issue, but a mobility issue, or they're taped up or wearing too tight of shoes or in a inopportune or inappropriate position using high heels or something like that. So the knee will, if there's an issue with the primary function of a joint, whether it's mobile or stable, the one above or below it will suffer. And so hip mobility is huge, because if you have a hip mobility issue, it will either manifest in three ways. It'll be a knee issue where it's moving too much. It'll be a lumbar spine issue where it's moving too much, or it'll be both. And there's no other way to go around it. So if you have a tight hip, which we all do that sit all day, then you're going to have either back pain, knee pain, or both.
Yeah, and the longer you let it go on, the more likely it's going to be both, because the compensation is going to create more compensation. So hopefully that makes it. So if you're,
and not only that, we're back to our body feel. The compensation pattern is going to become normal. It's going to feel normal. So I've had clients where they would go into extreme valgus stress of the knee, which is where the knee internally rotates and collapses in basically, which is bad on the meniscus, ACL, and the MCL, and they can't even feel it. And when we work to stabilize the knee and them not going to that position when they move, they say it hurts and they feel stiff and tight. But that's a good thing because we need them to tighten up in that area. So being in the wrong position feels normal.
Yeah.
And when you're in the wrong position and it feels normal, we're just cascading down to dysfunction.
Yeah. A good example of that would be after my knee surgery, I worked with you some on my squat form, and I didn't realize how badly I had started shifting to my non-surgical knee. So every time I would squat down, instead of going straight up and down, I would go down and kind of shift over to put more weight on my right leg. So in order to fix that, you grabbed a band and you pulled me.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, and then I would do that on my own later until that stopped feeling weird, basically. Because as you pulled me, away from that right side and into a neutral stance, it felt like I was imbalanced because I was so used to that imbalance.
Sorry, I'm making another picture because we're gonna have to go into this knee discussion.
Yeah. Another good example of what you were talking about of locking in the ankle, which is supposed to be mobile. You can just wiggle your ankle right now. You wiggle it in all sorts of different directions. As I discovered this just working on my own and then some unrelated reading, is if you are in or have been in the military, you need to do some barefoot work because you spend so much of your time in a boot that is designed to lock your ankle into place. And it needs to do that because that boot is designed to move on uneven terrain, which makes it very easy to roll that unstable or that highly mobile, I shouldn't say unstable, that highly mobile ankle. It makes it easy to roll it into a position where you would strain a ligament or a tendon, and you don't want to do that. Well, but there's a trade-off there, which since your ankle is locked in, when you move on something uneven, something's got to give, and it's usually going to be the knee. So that knee is going to start rolling in a way it's not supposed to, because the knee's just supposed to, like my elbow here, just back and forth. It's not supposed to roll around. So I've encountered lots of active duty or prior service military personnel who have got really wonky knees. Now, sometimes it's from an impact. Like obviously,
You're right back.
if you were airborne, impact, that's going to, but there's still a little bit of that ankle immobility coming in because, as you impact, what's wiggling, what's shifting is that knee.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's what I'm going to be evaluating tonight is, okay, when did this knee start hurting? And I discovered in my health questionnaire, he had a severe broken ankle. Okay, well, when was that? How long was that rehab? Is it the left knee that hurts more than the right knee? Because that would be a contributing factor.
Yeah, we probably have a stiff ankle, which mobile joint, knee compensating for it. But here's a little evaluation form I go through, and this is originally was an ACL for field and court sports evaluation, but it works for almost all knee pain. And like I said, it translates to the back. So I have them go through, I do an interview, which you talked about, just talking to them, getting where the pain is, when it hurts, if it's from fatigue, etc. Then I'd have them do 10 squats. I watch them from the front. Then I have them do 10 squats and I watch them from the back. And this is just body weight. Everything's body weight here. Then I have them do a step up on a 24-inch box. Watch with the right leg and the left leg, watching them from the front. A single leg squat, just standing there, pick one leg up and squat down as deep as you can. Right, left. Single leg hop. So they do a little squat and then they jump and land. And then right and left. And then a plank on the front, the right and the left for 1 minute. And just from watching them do those motions, you can determine a lot of things about their knee health. And you said this guy was a former wrestler and had a
Yeah.
broken knee, right? Or
Broken ankle.
broken ankle. So with the squat, what I'm going to really watch for is if that foot moves when he squats. Because if the foot moves when he squats, then you're probably it probably can't dorsiflex properly to handle the squat, so it's going to turn out. When it turns out and the knee stays forward, then we've got a rotating of that tibia inside or as it connects to the femur, which is not good, because again, it should be just a hinge. All right. Or he'll shift away from that side because his legs can't squat in that position. So he's going to shift away to the side that can squat better.
Yeah.
Step ups. One thing we're watching for in all the single leg motion, and this is pretty indicative of most knee pain. Oh, got another visual here. Is more stick figures. The triangles are the hips. All right, there we go. Is a Trendelenburg gait. Oops, other side, Trendelenburg gait. Right. When you watch the old cartoons and they have the lady that walks and her hips are going, that's a Trendelenburg gait. Okay. And
careful now, you're going to make the audience of 3 people get too excited.
Yeah. Sorry to wiggle my hips in front of you. But so in the trend gait, what they do is they push the hip out away and then lean away from that hip. And you see where the knee goes, so that the dotted line is the force curve. So that's the center of mass. So basically you stacked the hips over the knee and then leaned away to balance yourself. Okay. Normal, if we were to be in a perfect environment, you would be able to stand on that leg without shifting your weight. And then on the other side, can't keep doing this backwards. All right.
Other way. There we go.
There we go. This is a retro Trendelenburg, where see on this one, they shifted the knee to the center and then leaned away, popping the hip out to the side of the pain, right? This one, they stack on top of the knee on the side of the pain and create what we call a skeletal lock. So that bone's on top of this bone, on top of this bone. And then the upper body compensates by leaning into it. And so the other leg will compensate by kind of kicking out. So you've created this skeletal lock on the way down to take the pressure off the muscles. So it's bone stacked on bone, stacked on bone. And so those are the 2 things to really watch for, with a third one where this leg will corkscrew behind to balance themselves. Everything looks like this, except that other leg is scooting behind. So all the single leg work, those are the big 3 to watch for, because here's the obvious one. That's what we call valgus stress on the knee, where the knee's caving in. And actually, I'm going to move that because the foot would be pointed forward and the knee collapsing in. So that right there, if it's really bad, you'll see it on every step when they walk.
Yeah.
And if you see it on every step when they walk, that's every rep they take in the entire day. And it's just twist upon twist upon twist upon twist. But if you've got someone who's loading up, I guarantee when they're loaded on their squat, even if they're pretty solid in any other way, they'll squat down and that knee will go when they turn around every time, and then come up and
And this is what I was talking about when I was complaining about, hey, you people who I see doing Bulgarian squats. I love Bulgarian squats, but if you can't do it, don't do it. And that's what I mean is I'm seeing a lot of this shifting. So you can't drop straight up and down. So you're shifting to get that leg in a different position relative to your center of gravity.
So I've got a kettlebell here for a visualization for you. So let me chalk up because I got to use the grip here. So if this is my hip and my arms are my legs, when I go onto one leg, the muscles in the hip on the other side should be able to hold everything in place. All right. So I'm standing on 2 legs. I went on 1 leg. This is what should happen, and this is going to create healthy knees and a healthy back. All right. If I do not have the strength in this hip to do that, then I've got to come here. It's the only way I can stand up. All right. Otherwise, I'm going to stand on one leg and it's going to go. And if that happens, then oh, I've got to pull in. Now I've got to straighten it back out. And you see where the knee is at that point. So the hips are usually the primary cause. Now with your interview here, this guy's ankle's probably contributing. But yeah, back to the previous point, attack the joint and above and below where the pain is. And that's the joint by joint approach. So if you don't have an acute injury that you can point to, then that's probably acute non-contact injury to point to. That's probably the best method.
Right. And this one could be funly complicated because he spent years and years and years as a wrestler, which could mean you've got a repetitive use injury of the knee itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but even still, the fix is relatively the same.
Yeah.
Because if he had, so both of us being familiar with the wrestler shot, if someone's not familiar, YouTube it. A proper wrestler shot. It is a little, it would be considered improper form in a squat because you're shooting forward on the knee. Basically, it would be like popping up on your toes while you're squatting.
Yeah.
It's eccentric motion. You land on the ground and then scoop out the other side.
Yeah.
But it is stressful on the knee, but I think personally in a good way if you mitigate the load, if you don't do it like in a loaded environment. Mm-hmm. But if you have that rotation, when you did it, now we're going to do some real damage. If you can hinge the knee and do it, it's going to be okay. But if you have that, even a slightest bit of that rotation in there, then you're going to be doing damage over time. And so he might have some of that as well. But that'll all show up with that evaluation.
I have another interesting one that I'm curious what your response will be, because it made me go, have you ever heard from someone, oh yeah, I'm just double jointed, so you can't fix that?
Yes. Many times, or hypermobile. We call them hypermobile is the technical term. Sometimes it's double jointed. Sometimes they just easily go into overextension, which also, by the way, on the leg press, quit locking your legs up. But side point.
Look, anyone who wants to do a leg press, go look up Brett Contreras' video on the leg press.
One of the best. Yeah. One of the best. Don't reinvent the wheel. Brett Contreras. It is a consideration, but again, it's all part of its focus. They're hypermobile if they go into that overextension. If you don't ever go into it, it's not a problem. Mm-hmm. But that leads to a stability issue. And this is actually a problem I have on squats because I do have really loose hips compared to other males, is I tend to bounce off the bottom of the squat, bounce my hamstring off my calf and my butt off my heels to get back up. So that's actually a problem because there's a lot of stress in that moment where it turns around. So I have to do in my own programming a lot of eccentric load squats where you go real slow and then come back up, or pauses where you go to the bottom and then actually I'll touch my butt to my heels and then I'll come up a little bit and hold 2, 3, and then back up. So I can get that turnaround without having to bounce it. So part of it is focus. You have to really be, and the fix to it is exercises that help you focus. Like I just brought up, pause squats, pause whatever movement it is, wherever their mobility issues lie. So what we try to achieve when it comes to mobility, which was one of the 5 elements of fitness, right, is not only the ability to go through every motion, but the ability to control your body through every motion. So can I just fling my leg over my head, or can I pick my leg up and put it over my head and come back? If I can just fling my leg over my head, that's probably a back problem waiting to happen.
Yeah.
If I can pick it up, put it over my head and come back, well, I can maintain that mobility and still maintain my health at the same time. And you see this in well, can I bring up a job that might be a little racy? Someone who dances at a gentleman's club. makes a lot of money by being able to put their leg over the head, but say they have back pain and they want you to help them with
We
it,
mentioned
right?
Cirque du Soleil. Let's go to Cirque du Soleil.
Yeah. Okay. Cirque du Soleil. Oh, dang it. Okay. Yeah. So I have to be able to do a contortionist position,
Mhm.
but at the same time, I have to be strong in that position.
Yeah.
So if I can be very, very mobile, but be strong in those mobile positions, then I can be healthy.
Yeah. Another good example of that would be a gymnast on a balance beam doing the splits and holding it there. So, I mean, it's one thing to do the
Watch
splits, another
Juji
to
Mufu.
do it,
Jeez.
hold it. What?
Watch Juji Mufu
Jujimufu?
doing 200-pound overhead splits on a chair.
That sounds dangerous.
Would it be a copyright thing if I brought up a YouTube video?
Yeah, probably.
Probably.
We can
Dang
link it.
Uh,
I wanted your response on the double jointed thing, because this is where my brain goes when I hear that. Is what I think that person is thinking is along the same lines of, oh, I'm just big boned, or oh, I have a slow metabolism. When you think you're double jointed, I, I think you're probably thinking there's something genetic that makes my joint different from other people. That's why
well,
I'm able to, reach my arms behind my head in weird ways. And the odds of that are incredibly low. That
okay.
you're
So
what?
the odds are incredibly low, and this is where you don't get in an argument with a very skilled biologist because who's worked in the field for a long time, because everybody's got some sort of consideration, but that's the key word. They are considerations. So you come to me and tell me you're double jointed. It is not an excuse. It's a consideration. So
Yeah.
I am going to make you strong in those positions and make you be able to control when it happens and doesn't happen. So don't come to me and say it as an excuse. Come to me and say it as something we need to keep into account while we train. So I'm not going to have you put in a position where your shoulder could pop out of socket while we're doing an exercise, but I'm going to make it to where it doesn't happen more and more and more and more and more. And that's the complete difference. Now we're talking two different things too. Can I fling my arm over my head, or do I have to dislocate my shoulder to do so? Those are two separate situations. Either way, we're still going to work on it, because if it's something that just happens, well, guess what? It's not functional. We need to fix that.
Yeah.
If it's something that is that I'm able to do, well, let's play to that advantage. Because
Right.
then it becomes less of a liability and more of a, wow, you're kind of cool in this
Yeah.
area.
Yeah, like you mentioned last time, maybe you're one of those very few people who has enough scapular mobility that you can do a behind the neck press or pull down and maintain proper form. But so specifically, if you're double jointed, so that's why you walk funny. Okay, no, that's
No. Okay, so here's the answer to that. If someone says, I'm double jointed, that's why I walk funny, say, no, you're double jointed, but you're too weak to walk. That's why you walk funny.
yeah. And if you're trying to figure these things out on your own, whether you're another term that's used is a special population. Okay. So like we're both special populations because the usual rules don't always apply to us because we have underlying injuries and health conditions, right? So it's possible that you have an underlying structural problem that's making you walk funny. But whether it's that or just the fact that you have weaknesses that you haven't addressed, either way, the fix is going to be the same. So you need to figure that out and start working on that one. Start progressing towards where you get a proper alignment.
Well, and the mental state has to play into this too. Are
Yeah.
you thinking of this as a limitation, or are you thinking of this to say, wow, I'm going to speak from experience here because but just in case someone new is watching, I have congenital heart disease, and it's a pretty serious condition with what I have, and I have to tell people. And the fact that I have to tell people is a source of pride, because I'm not just wallowing in my own self-pity saying, oh God, I can't do this or that or whatever. You can train through anything. I've got a client that's type 1 diabetic, and she's having amazing results right now because we got her sugars in order. We figured it out. We got her medications right and her insulin pump right and her exercise right. And now she's dropped, I think she said 20 pounds in the last 2 months. Yeah, you did it in spite of this. So someone who comes in double jointed, you can say, well, you know what? There's all these other things around that joint that can stabilize it. So let's work on those. Boom, you come out of it and you're a very stable person, and then you can do your party trick. That's pretty awesome, right? When you can never guess the dysfunction by looking at somebody, that's actually a feather in the hat. So that's my view on it. But people hate that. People hate that.
That's a good view. And that's the part of training that annoys me, is the having to be part psychologist, because I know there are certain things I shouldn't say, and it's hard for me to not say them, because to actually get results and have an impact, you need to be able to phrase things in a way that provoke a response, a positive response.
Well, the key to that though is developing rapport. They say it in sales. You can ultimately tell anybody anything if you develop the right rapport. And when people get the impression that you care as much about them or more than your own personal ego, then you can say a lot more. And that's really the approach I take with everybody. It's not always successful because some people just aren't receptive.
We've accidentally segued perfectly into what you wanted to talk about, because something that I've struggled with, and that you brought up, cognitive behavioral therapy, that I worked on in that, is trying to develop a good rapport with yourself. Because if there's a difference between critiquing yourself and being critical of yourself, right? So if I can't develop a good rapport with myself, then that pushes me into that depression I struggle with, right? So in the same way that you need a trainer to be positive and encouraging you and critiquing you with positively, so that you want to work on these things that you're struggling with. If you're being critical of yourself, well, then I don't want to go to the gym today. I'm just going to sit here and drink some Mountain Dew and eat some Twinkies. I don't like Twinkies. Eat some nutty bars. Yeah, those are better.
You like nuts and bars?
Yeah. I go to the Blue Oyster to get my fix. Name that movie reference. So you do need to have that positive rapport with yourself. To paraphrase, I just brain farted on his name. Lambeau, Green Bay Packers coach. To paraphrase him, losing is a habit, but so is winning. So choose which habit you want to get into.
Well, we talked about programming of the brain, and this is part of it. Habits become structure. And this happens even in prenatal environment. So the habits of your mother while you're in the womb actually start programming parts of your brain before you're even out of the womb. And then we get to all the way through development in different parts. And not only until you're about 25 is your prefrontal cortex fully developed. And even then, it still can atrophy or grow dependent on how your habits are. Same with your amygdala, which is kind of your emotional response. Your hypothalamus, your hippocampus, all of those different parts of your brain will restructure as your experience a lot. So it's just mostly in place by the age of 25. In fact, I saw something not that long ago, and I wanted to follow up on it, but I'm working on other stuff. Is if you have a child with really bad behavior, by the time they're 4 years old, if you don't do something to mitigate that, then they will continue for the rest of their life. Uh, that that's actually pretty dang strong, because
Yeah.
you and I are both parents. Uh, and we've also seen that kid that is about that age that's just hell inside the restaurant or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's something that, again, programming gets a bad rap, but at the same time, we're trying to coexist in a society. And there is something to be said about uh, cultural influence on brain structure. And if you live in a certain culture, that's not a bad thing. Like I brought up the example of going to England. And if I started driving on the right side of the road, the handedness, right, the right side of the road, I'm not going to live very long.
Hmm.
So we have to adapt to culture. And then that takes work once you've gotten past a certain point and you've already adapted to another specific culture. But it's that constant reprogramming, and actually to the tune of about 3% every night you sleep. Now that could be reinforcing something you're already doing, or it could be reprogramming something, but it's about 3% every night.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. Yeah.
I mean, because you're talking cumulatively, that's a lot,
Mhm.
So that's every night. So 3% doesn't sound like a lot, but every night.
Yeah. So if you're working on something new, you want repetition, 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 repetition. So that way, when you go to bed at night and your neurons, the synapses start readapting to create new connections, you want it to focus on that. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
Uh, I'm trying to think, do we want to go emotional or do we want to go physical with this? Because we were talking about working out.
Well, and one of the reasons we're into this is because it is both. I mean, they're separate
Mhm.
elements, but they are linked. So as an example, one of the things I like about my pain management doctor is he was very good at nudging me, you know, into not just therapy but also psychiatry,
Mhm.
because I'm one of those people that just therapy wasn't enough. I needed brain chemistry adjustment, right? And that was contributing, my anxiety and depression was contributing to my physical pain, and I needed to address both of them.
Not only that, the other thing we talked about before, me and you in private, is your spine can actually learn pain. And once it's
Mhm.
learned pain, it has to unlearn it, even if there's no stimulus to actually cause the pain.
Yeah.
And it's a structural phenomenon. It probably has some adaptive value at some point in time, or it's probably a piggyback. My estimation would be a piggyback on some other adaptive value where the pain was a useful cue at
Yeah.
some point, but because of the nature of how it learned it, it can't unlearn it easily. But yeah, all of these things have adaptive value. The problem is we live in, back to our original point, was we live in a point in civilization, especially those of us that are in Western civilization, which first world problems comes to mind. So if you have a lot of problems in Western civilization, they're first world problems, is we live so out of tune with the the uh, the actual oppressive nature of nature, the oppressive properties of nature, that we're having trouble mentally and physically adapting. We're overweight. We're over repetitively stressed. We're over anxiety. We have too much anxiety. We have too much depression, all because of our lack of touch with real stress. Stress of actually trying to eat today, or stress of, gosh, this sun is burning my skin, I need shelter.
Hmm.
Stress of, holy crap, how long do I have to walk till I get water? Stress of, is that a lion? I think I'm food. That kind of stress. We're so out of touch with that we as human beings are able to create our own stress in our own mind, which is actually maladaptive. and it creates a flood of hormones and neurotransmitters that our body does not handle very well.
And I mean, you talked about societal impact on these things. We're now in a point in time where an annoying chunk of society is embracing these negative behaviors, creating negative feedback loops. So, for instance, uh, one of the elements that makes things like critical race theory so attractive is because there is power in victimhood. You gain special status through victimhood. Okay, well, but victimhood uh, is a negative place. It's a negative experience. If you're willfully taking on victimhood, I'm a victim because, ignoring all the objective markers of how you're not a victim, if you're convincing yourself that you're a victim, then you're putting yourself in a negative place mentally. And not only putting yourself there, but being convinced and convincing yourself that staying there is important.
I think this is the best time for my analogy
Okay.
because it plays on the psychological and physical. And this, forgive me, everyone, because this is the first time I'm actually speaking it outside of my head. So, as we alluded to earlier, I do have congenital heart disease, and one of the main manifestations that is currently still there is a defective aortic valve. In the tune that most people have 3 flaps in their aortic valve, and so blood pumps out and they all come together, and it's a really organic system to come together and make a tight seal so no blood can go back in. Whereas 2 valves is not very good at that. And so I have 2 valves instead of 3. And one of them is because the third that should have been there never fully developed. So there's a giant hole. And so when my heart pumps, blood rushes out. And then when it opens up to let new blood in the right way, also blood from the other way comes back in. So that's one of the main issues. So you get a little less blood flow. The other thing is, when you talk about the electrical signal that goes through the heart, you have it starts in the atria and then goes down to the ventricles and then creates that boom, 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 which is natural. And so fibrillations, when you have an irregular heartbeat, almost everybody in their entire life is going to have some atrial fibrillations. It just happens with age. Hydration plays into it, electrolytes, everything. And some people are predisposed to it. But the stop valve to that going to the ventricles is the aortic valve as well. So that electrical signal goes through that structure, and think of it like a circuit board. And there is a stop valve that says, no, this beat is different down here. It is not going to be the same as the one above it. So if you have a fibrillation in atria, it's annoying. It tickles a little bit. Sometimes you could be a little out of breath because you're not getting oxygen as well. But the ventricles stay running normal, which is that big beat that pumps blood to the rest of your body. But when you have an issue with that aortic valve, that stop valve is messed up. And so when you have an atrial fibrillation, you have a high percentage chance of having a ventricle, which if you don't stop that in about 4 or 5 seconds, you're going to pass out. And if it doesn't stop while you're passed out, you're going to die. And that's just how it is. That's why VFib is considering a major medical condition. And normally they have, they put you in a surgical routine, which I've already gone through. And it helped to the extent that it could help at the moment. But again, we naturally go through that process. And if you don't have that stop valve, it happens. Now, there's technique to get it right. So if I feel it coming, I bear down like I'm doing a Valsalva, like I'm trying to take a poop while I'm constipated. And so if I ever crap my pants in somebody's presence, just know that I was dying at the time. So, or potentially,
But as
so
a good friend, I'm still going to make fun of you.
yeah, we make sure I'm okay first and then make fun of me. That's fine. But it stimulates the vagus nerve, which resets the sympathetic nervous system. So that's a good technique. Drinking a frozen drink will do it, but it could also kick it into it. So you got to be careful with those. I don't have margaritas anymore.
Oh no.
Yeah, not frozen. I have on the rocks, but so something to stimulate the vagus nerve, which the easiest way in a moment when you only have 4 or 5 seconds to handle the situation is to bear down, and so you kind of live with this, and you've got this problem that's there, and it doesn't go away because we've already done all the surgical interventions we can, and you're just aware of it. And when it happens, you take the proper techniques, and you're always kind of the mental side of it is you're always afraid you're not going to get it in time, or it's going to happen in your sleep. So you're always kind of having this little bit of fear in the back of your mind. And that's psychologically challenging, to say the least, that you could die at any moment. And if you're not ready for it, then it's more likely to happen. Now let's take a benign situation. Heartburn, a little bit of esophagus damage, you ate too much, or you drink too much, so your esophagus is sensitive. Anything that causes heartburn, it actually feels the same. It feels almost exactly the same as when you're having a cardiac episode with the real problem. And so now take someone like myself who's experienced both and preaches to everyone out there that has heartburn that they're going to die. If they
A
don't,
lot of people have heartburn.
if they're not on top of this. So if I preached my experience with the VFib that is constantly there and could kill me at any moment, and I preached that exact same, I projected that fear into everybody in the world that has heartburn. Or if even I was a doctor telling everybody that came to me that had heartburn that they had this other problem, that it could kill them at any moment, they should be afraid. What psychological impact am I going to have on all those people with heartburn? And regardless of whether I believed I was doing the right thing or not, am I a good person for projecting this fear onto this giant population for something that's actually very rare? Now let's look at CRT. CRT, we have instances of racism, violent racism and overt racism in the United States, but it is rare. It is probably on par with all other psychotic criminals in the United States, which is about 1%, which is still 1 out of 100, which is 3 million out of the 300 million people, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we've got this thing that is there, but it is rare. And then we've got pockets of it where it manifests, where we do have some echoes of past racism. Downtown Minneapolis is a great example. Downtown Houston, 3rd Ward, 4th Ward, those are great examples where this echo of the past still exists. So we have these pockets. Those are the VFibs. These instances of rare racism, these pockets of just horrid condition are the VFib, but we're projecting it on every Black person in the United States of America. Mm-hmm. And there are people responsible for that. I don't care what their intentions are. They're projecting this small percentage onto everyone else. And to me, that's exactly the same. Again, something benign, something that's partly your own fault, because most heartburn is because of your diet, alcohol consumption, smoking, or exercise. So it's a projection of something that is real and rare onto everybody else, and look at the psychological impact that can cause. And that's why I fight this fight. because we
Yeah.
talked about brain structure, reprogramming. If you're taught to be afraid of something and you fear is the mind slayer. That's a name of an album. Great band, Fear Factory. Fear is the mind slayer, and it's the truth. Fear is the number one restructuring component in the mind.
Well, and the people who preach, I think your example of, if you were more than just, if you were you telling everyone that who has heartburn that they're going to die, I think it's more apt to say, if you were an MD, if you were a medical
Mhm.
doctor telling everyone, that's more what it's like, because you've got people in positions of power and authority and influence who are preaching this, who should be, uh, who should lose their medical license, figuratively speaking, because of what they're doing is malpractice. Um, and even these people will use that fear and will talk about it in its historical examples. Now they're using it to twist to say, see, here's how these people have been historically oppressed, and then make the leap to they are still oppressed. But that
That would like
was
be me going, well, I'm the only one in my family to live this long because everyone else died.
Mhm.
You know, which is the truth. It's again, it's projecting the fucking Kimberly Crenshaw mapping the margins. It's projecting the margin on the population.
Mhm.
And people look to that as kind of a religious text, but at the same time, it explains why it's so wrong. We cannot govern to the margins because that's not how you run a successful system.
Yeah.
And
And unless your goal is to uh, whip people into an irrational frenzy, which is what we've talked about. We think there are definitely some bad actors who are doing that, because as I was saying, they'll use these historical examples. You know, the anti-Semitism. The obvious example is Nazi Germany, but it goes way back into the Middle Ages, where there were mass murders of Jews and anti-Semitism, and it was fear. It was these people are a threat to our lives and our livelihood and our society as a whole. It was used in the South to justify Jim Crow, that blacks were dangerous, so they have to be kept apart. It was used uh, in California and the West Coast to institute Chinese or Asian exclusion laws for immigration. Is these people are a threat. We don't want them in our communities. Well, now you're doing the exact same thing and claiming it as a virtue.
well, because it's presented in a virtuous way.
Mhm.
Because fear still plays into this. But it's the fear of all of us to have this discussion with someone who is in the margin. Because, like I said, you can't tell by looking at me. You can't tell by looking at me that I'm that person that has this specific problem.
Mhm.
The same thing when you talk about, we won't even talk race here. Let's talk about female interaction with men. So when we're looking at someone, kind of the Title IX perpetuation of believe what she says, believe her, Me Too,
Yeah.
etc. Me Too, in its presented form, has a lot of merit, but Me Too, as it's being used in a lot of ways, is very manipulative. But the problem is in between, we're so afraid to confront the person who was actually legitimately assaulted. And you can't tell by looking at them, because all you have is what they've said. and what any evidence you have to go forward, which is very little usually, because that's that kind of crime. There is very little evidence. So do I believe this person or not? And everybody's so afraid to not believe the wrong person that we can't confront the issue because it's just set up in that platform. And then you go to race. Well, okay, so maybe XYZ person we're dealing with, Y in that equation has been assaulted based on the color of his skin, or actually walked into a job interview and the guy said, no, we don't want your color here, or one of these other manifestations that is overt racism. But X and Z are working on microaggressions and their own internal thoughts on what goes on around them versus the actual intent of the action. So we're so afraid of running into Y that we give in to X and Z. And so fear still manifests in this, I want to do the right thing.
And it leads to confirmation bias, which just it creates that negative feedback loop, which for instance, so your example of a Black individual who claims to have this bad experience that was racism and oppression. Well, did you or did you presume that? For instance, how many times have you had a negative interaction with a police officer? Handful, at least, over your life? Yeah.
I have a perfect driving record, and
shut up. I have been pulled over a few times.
And okay, well, the only negative interaction I've had with police officers is part of the problem we're talking about, because I lived in a predominantly Black neighborhood and it took 45 minutes for them to come out when someone was actually assaulting my family. But
delightful.
Yeah, the negative interaction wasn't my personal interaction with them. It was the fact that they just weren't doing their job. So yeah, I can't think of really one. So.
Okay, well then I'll use myself as an example, because I've had a half dozen that I could recount. Okay, I chalk that up to that individual being bad at their job or just an a-hole personally. Okay, but if I've been inculcated into being certain that these people are out to get me because of the color of my skin, well then all of a sudden that person's not just an a-hole, that person's a racist a-hole. And well, it's just confirmed it because they were being a jerk to me. No, maybe they were just a jerk.
And this is part of my problem, is it's actually taught in the literature. It's not about intent, it's about impact. So how I feel about the situation determines what was actually the cause, which is, I wish people would realize how narcissistic that thought pattern is. And we can create narcissists. You're not necessarily born a narcissist. You might be predispositioned to it, but we can create it too. In fact, I think the helicopter parent generation, which is typically a codependent type behavioral pattern, has created narcissistic children. That's one of my long-term kind of hypothesis of why we're where we're at. But yeah, this whole impact versus intent is teaching people to go ahead and prescribe the other person's intent to the action. And so this cop gave me a ticket, he must be racist because I'm Black. Well, you could say that any time of day, but you have no proof. But it's your story. It's your lived experience because you believe it. Meatwad quote, I don't know if anything I said was true, but I believe it. You know?
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
And again, what we're talking about here is mental health. Is that a good state of mental health? If I hate going to the gym because every experience is a negative experience, so I'm just going to sit here and drink Mountain Dew and eat nutty bars.
Well, let's go deeper into that, because if going to the gym is a negative experience for you, you're going to create a shit ton of glucocorticoids in your uh, in your limbic system, and it's going to just barrage your whole system, and you're going to have a negative impact from your workout. So you're going to self-fulfill prophecy.
Mhm.
So we go back to rat studies. Even if you poke and prod a rat to get on the wheel and it runs on the wheel, and then you just let a rat get on a wheel when it wants to, but it runs the same amount of time, it has a better result from that run on the wheel than the one that you poked and prodded to get on it, because of the neurotransmitters that you.
Yep. Yep. So I'm incapable of doing something positive for myself because I've convinced myself and I've put myself into this negative loop, this negative reinforcing loop because of these preconceived ideas, these preconceived biases. And so now I've got to, first of all, you've got to recognize that. And that's the disconnect here where I don't know what we do is that, I mean, we have friends, like literal friends that I've known for decades who are just steeped in this critical race theory and have gotten far more radical over the years. And I don't know how to convince them, first of all, that this is a problem, that this is a negative headspace, as the lingo goes today. You're in a negative headspace and you're going to be incapable of positive and productive interaction with your, you know, fellow citizens, with your friends who disagree with you, uh, unless you get out of that.
Well, and therein lies the problem, because it is a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I know one of these people you're specifically talking about,
Mm-hmm.
and his social media posts have followed a pattern that have basically proved my overall point on CRT, because I go into the aspects of fear and how it affects your brain and the brain structure. And so fear is the primary emotional response of the amygdala, and the amygdala uh, communicates directly with the prefrontal cortex, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And so an emotional response can be mitigated by a rational response if they're communicating properly. But the problem is they reprogram based on the experience of the other. And so when you keep creating a fear response, you're going to create more synapses in the amygdala and less in the prefrontal cortex, or less stop valves to that same thing. And then they also communicate with the memory centers, so you're remembering more of the bad things. So all of these things are becoming an interplay, and you can basically teach yourself to be afraid. And then we enter another realm when we add this thing called empathy, where I can watch George Floyd die and identify with something about him because I've been trained to do that, which is the color of his skin. Well, I can't, but these people, this person we're talking about can. And so he could say, that's me too. And so now when he goes to sleep, that reprogramming again happens. So now this thing is reinforced, 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 and that fear center grows. More synapses, more basically gray matter size of that, less on the other side, less stop valve, more, 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 more. Well, that fear center is also the anxiety center, because anxiety is basically fear of an unknown future, if you really want to break it down. But the other part of it is aggression. So those are all intertwined, because aggression is a great response to real fear in nature.
Mm-hmm.
If a lion jumps out of the bushes at me and attacks me, and I'm aggressive in my response, I am more likely to survive, because I am going to fight it off and flee. Versus if I freeze up and I don't move, I'm dead.
Yeah.
So aggression is a great response to fear. And so we've got this center of our brain that is reactionary, and it's being bolstered, where we've got this center of our brain that is rational and deep thinking and wants to look at every angle, and that's being reduced in some way, shape, or form. And especially This is my fear of it in schools because we're doing it at an age when this whole center is developing, right? And we can create a situation where that same exact person will self-fulfill prophecy because they will get pulled over. You know, you're one tail light out away from being pulled over at any given time, right?
Anybody is. Yep.
Yeah. So the one time I've been pulled over in the last 20 years was a tail light. So you're one something away from being pulled over at any given time, or even an accident you didn't cause, but the cops showed up. Something out of your control. And if you're in a hyper anxiety state, when that happens, you're more likely to do something stupid and more likely to do something aggressively stupid in that situation. And then we get another number.
Well, and we've got two real life extreme examples of that. The Dallas shooter, and I don't know how many people even remember this because it was several years ago. I want to say it was like 5-6 years ago. Because it was when the BLM movement was first getting going. So it was whenever that was.
Is that the one that shot all the cops?
Uh-huh. Yep. He went out to murder cops. And I can't remember how many he shot and killed, but it was during a big BLM protest. This kid had become and I saw an interview. His parents only did one interview, and it was really heartbreaking. That this was someone who had been twisted by this rhetoric, by academia, who I grow more and more to despise. He had been twisted by academia and become radicalized and became fearful that cops were really out to get him. And in his distorted mind, what he did was not only wholly rational, but wholly moral. Because if cops are going out purposely to kill Black people, then he's going out to defend them. And that's what he did. And the more recent example is this, who is the guy that went into the grocery store? Was that Colorado Springs?
Yes.
Shot up the grocery store. Turned out the guy was
Syrian.
I think he was like second generation Islamic Syrian. And he was a nut already. He was already kind of crazy, kind of had paranoid
schizophrenic. Yeah.
But then you add on top of that,
what he was paranoid about.
Yeah. Okay. I can be just some crazy Kaczynski tinfoil hat. The government's trying to hack my phone and they're watching me. Okay. So, I'm crazy, but now add on to that, and they're out to get me because let's say that this war on Christmas, war on Christianity rhetoric just really takes an exponential leap into the area where this critical race theory is. Okay, so now add on to that I think the government is out to oppress fellow Christians. Well, what am I going to do? I'm going to get a gun and go do something about it because I'm already kind of crazy. And that's what he did. Is the government was out to get him because he was a person of color, because he was a Muslim. The government was out to get him. The country was out to get him. So he did what was rational in his crazy mind. And you kind of gave me a little brain tingle here as your VFib analogy on CRT made me think of an analogy on why we need to fix it. So with my busted up back, I know I need to exercise at least every other day, if not daily, that I will in the long term feel better, even if sometimes I just loathe going to the gym. Okay. But I know I need to get out of that negative headspace because I can't fix myself unless I get out of that negative headspace so that I can progress. Right. So same thing. We are in a place where people are just hating each other and fearful of each other. Those are negative emotions. You're in a negative headspace. You cannot fix that until you get out of that turmoil of negative emotions. And we know where this goes because people are people, because we have history ad nauseum of groups turned against each other and what happens.
Well, and this is where cognitive behavioral therapy comes in. And this is the difficult path. Is medication is easy, but actually confronting something consistently enough that actually scares you. And I truly believe that at least the mutual friend that we talk about here is in a headspace where he he is legitimately afraid.
Yeah.
Uh, I still, yeah, intent does matter. So his intent is good because he is legitimately afraid. I'm trying to convince him that his impact is also still also matters. You
Yeah.
know, uh, if I drive home drunk, I don't intend to kill anybody, but I still could, right?
Right.
Uh, but at the same time, when I make the decision to drive while I'm drunk, I'm not in my best headspace, you know,
Right.
and he's not in his best headspace right now. And the solution to it is to reprogram, and to reprogram in a positive way for yourself and for everyone around you. It's not just a, oh, I'm taking time for myself kind of thing, which tends to be self-centered. It's I'm taking time to make my my life better for me and be pro-social at the same time, because that will also make my life better for me. Uh, so the behavioral therapy is painful because you're going to have to uh, go through a process where you put yourself in a fearful situation in order to see the other side that doesn't play out the way your brain thought it was going to play out. You have to go through every interaction of every day. I mean, in the case of the race issue, you still are the minority. You're 13% of the population by the new census. So almost 9 out of 10 people you interact with every day, unless you live in these pockets of the United States that are more so, is going to be with someone of a different ethnic background than yourself, and you have to account for the 100 that go right versus the one that goes wrong. And you have to mentally do that, because we were specifically programmed to look at things that go wrong because that's survival.
Yeah.
It's a painful, long process.
And in part because what we've been talking about and building up to here is because of that physical and mental link, that you have put yourself in a place where feeling bad feels right.
Mm-hmm.
And you have hormones that are reinforcing that.
Mm-hmm.
There are chemicals in your body that are reinforcing that feeling, because that's the pattern that you have adapted yourself to.
Here's where implicit bias comes into this. If you want to use the real scientific version of this, this was the new tingle that just came up. Okay, so not only is it hormones, but it's structure. So what's being used in the CRT movement as implicit bias are studies like faces flashing before you, and the negative effect of someone of a different skin color as yourself that it has on a brain scan, etc. But we can create that situation. So experience has a lot to do with it. So if I grew up in a very diverse area, that doesn't happen to me.
Yeah.
So the same thing happens if I'm being taught to fear something. So if I'm being taught to fear white faces and I take that same test, it's going to come up every time. That my amygdala is going to fire up every time that a white face shows up. And what CRT twists this into is the oppression hierarchy, where that's only natural when you're oppressed to fear the oppressor. So, but at the other side, if the oppressor fires up at the oppressed, it's the reinforcing that the bias exists. So depending on where you are on this oppression hierarchy, your reaction has a different interpretation, but you're creating that. So if you're teaching this oppressor oppressed dynamic, then you're creating a fear response. Because if you see a skin color here and you're the opposite, then, and I'm considered the oppressor, then I am there to hurt you. And if you have ingrained in your head that I'm there to hurt you, all those synapses are going to fire. There, it's the receptors for the calcium versus the other binding sites, and everything is just going to be there, and it's going to be self-replicating until you make it not, which is a long, painful process, because fear hurts.
Yeah,
fear sucks.
it's supposed to.
It's supposed to, because it teaches you, right? But we can also learn it. It teaches you, but we can learn it.
And so you have to ask yourself, do you want to live in a place of perpetual fear? Because again, my conundrum here is, I can see why this is bad, and I can see how we unwind this in our brains, but I just don't see how someone steeped in critical race theory could ever see that it's bad. Well, we're talking about mental health, and supposedly we have, well, not supposedly, we do have a mental health crisis in our country, but there's a lot of people using that phrase who don't really seem to want to address it. And so if you actually want to address the country's mental health, then you need to address your personal mental health. And that means getting out of any state that you're in that puts you in a place of perpetual fear and anxiety.
Which is just like exercise. Because you have to start slowly and you have to work your way up.
Appropriately uncomfortable.
Well, and develop connection. When I'm working with somebody that has pain, one of the first things I do is I connect them to the ground, and I have them feel the floor under their feet. I want them to feel that pressure on their feet, and then, okay, I want you to feel this contract as we move in this motion. It's a long process because we've so disconnected from that, and we do that with our mind too. It's part of the disconnect that we could just say, oh, everything's socially constructed. Culture determines everything. So if you don't fit in, it's culture's fault, not yours. When you gotta feel your way through it. And that's how we develop as children, is we feel our way through things. We start with our mothers, that touch we have with them, and that connection we have with our mothers, and then the way they interact with us, and then eventually the way they interact with others, and then eventually the way we interact with others. And so we develop this feel through time that allows us to be part of the society that we live in, the culture that we live in, the environment that we live in. And it's physical, it's mental, and it's emotional. They all come together. But it takes time.
Yep. So I think we've been rambling on for a while here. I think that's a good place to stop and say, just go out and make yourself uncomfortable a little bit uncomfortable, a little bit at a time.
We didn't talk about abortion.
No, I think we should do that Thursday. So we've been talking about critical race theory a lot. And so
well,
I think our Thursday conversations tend to be a little more focused, because they have to be, because we have less time.
I just have to develop some street cred, because I got to poop on the right for a little bit.
Okay. Have I not pooped on the right enough for both of us?
Well, you got to be extreme left to be pooping on the right. So no, I probably won't be pooping on the right then, but I got to poop on the right, because we've got some, the problem is this mission we have with CRT and the socialist movement, the potentially communal movement, is where the right has been the good guy for a little bit. But at the same time, they're starting to piggyback some stuff, and they're using the momentum that they've gathered from all the other social issues with the pendulum swing to push other things that kind of irk me in that front. So that's
No.
why I think we got to go down that road, because this whole heartbeat bill and et cetera are kind of, it's not only against where I am on the issue, but it's also really freaking bad timing for combating the other stuff, because
That's a good-
it plays into the fears of the left, which actually
Yeah.
adds legitimacy.
So that's a good tease for Thursday and what we'll focus on that recording.
Yeah. I'll put the whole thing up, but I'll clip this down to fitness and political as well. So,
Yep. So go away, people,
yeah, be nice to each other though. We
but
like you.
uncomfortable. I love you, man.
All right. I love you too, dude. Talk to you later.